Hey, what's up YouTube? It's Jacob King Among Men here, coming at you with a Paleozoic deck profile. Got it pulled up here. I'm going to go over what cards I use and why I use them. And before I start, I'd just like to give a shout out to Alfred Danklefsen. Even if it's hard to pronounce, I love that name. I drew inspiration from his deck list. I definitely made a few changes to make this deck my own. Some stuff I think works better. Obviously, there's not two Max C, but anyway, I'll link to his deck list in the description. And without any further ado, let's get started. The first card in this deck is Swap Frog. He is the catalyst for this deck, more or less. He can be special summoned from your hand by sending another level 2 or lower Aqua type monster, which is pretty much only ever going to be Ronin Totem or Dupe Frog. That effect is really useful. Whenever we get to the next card, you'll see why. And then also, you can send a card, a level 2 or lower Aqua type monster, from your deck to the graveyard when this guy is summoned. Also very useful because of Ronin Totem, which brings us to Ronin Totem. He is useful for making Totally Awesome, and that's really all he's useful for. He comes into play by removing another frog in the graveyard from play, and when that happens, it makes it significantly easier to make Totally Awesome, which is basically the main goal in this deck. Sometimes you can even get 2 of him out at once and just have a free Totally Awesome right there without playing any cards from your hand. Really the MVP of the deck for sure. And then to round out the frog engine, we run Dupe Frog. This one's just good because it can keep your Totally Awesome from getting run over. He absorbs attacks. He can't target any other monsters for an attack while he is on the field. And then when he dies, you can add another frog from your grave to your hand. That can be really any of the frogs that you have in your grave. They can all be useful at different times depending on what you need. He's just a really nice way to round out the frog engine. And that finishes up the monsters. Very brief, only 8 monsters in this deck. And then we will move on to the spell lineup, which is also quite brief. Comes down to just Card of Demise. This is the only spell I run in this deck, and I run it because the draw power is just too fantastic to ignore. A lot of times you are easily able to set your entire hand with this deck, which just leaves you drawing 3 cards straight up. Once you draw those cards, you fill up whatever space you have on the board, and hopefully you have a Paleozoic trap or 2 in your hand that you end up discarding at the end, which leaves you with plenty of material to pull out of the graveyard to make rank 2 plays with. Alright, now on to the traps. First up we got Wabaku. The errata of this card is just insane. It really helps to not only pull Paleozoics out of the graveyard, but also to keep them alive for a turn. That's very important. Whenever they die on the field, unless they're XYZ material, of course, they're just banished and you can't use them again. And it's pretty important that that does not happen. And Wabaku helps with this a lot. Then we've got Bottomless Trap Hole. That's at 1, of course, because you can't have any more. It's always a powerful card. You can run it in pretty much any deck, arguably. But it's really good in this deck because not only does it banish an opponent's monster, but it also gives you a +1 when you pull that Paleozoic out of the graveyard. The first Paleozoic card in the deck is Paleozoic Olenites. This is basically the MST of the deck. It just straight up target 1 spell trap on the field and destroy it. But just like all the other Paleozoics, I'll go ahead and get this effect out of the way. Its special summon from the graveyard effect is that when a trap card is activated while this card is in your graveyard, special summon this card as a normal monster. Aqua, level 2, 1200 attack. But it's banished when it leaves the field. Also, while it is a monster, it's not affected by other monster effects. That's very important, and that's something that a lot of people forget while they're playing Paleozoics. You also have to remember that it's not affected by your own monster effects, so if you're trying to do something that buffs up a Paleozoic monster, or trying to use one as tribute fodder for Totally Awesome, it's not going to work. Moving on, we'll go to Paleozoic Dimiscus. This is the one that banishes stuff. You have to target a face-up card on the field and discard a card. Definitely the steepest cost of any of the Paleozoic traps, but still very useful. Being able to banish any face-up card on the field is just an amazing ability in any deck. I run 2 Quaking Mirror Force and 1 Drowning Mirror Force. I honestly think that Quaking is the best, unless you're playing against Monarchs or True Dracos or something like that that's tribute-based. being able to permanently slip down opponents' monsters usually just makes them pretty much useless in a lot of decks. But I do run one Drowning still, just because being able to shuffle everything into the deck is nice, even though you're not getting attacked directly a lot in this deck. And the times that you are, this can be a real lifesaver. And of course, you can chain Paleozoics from the graveyard to all these, and you just get pluses off all these traps. It's great. Except for Torrential Tribute. This is the one that you don't want to chain any Paleozoics to, because they will get destroyed by the Torrential, because of the way that chains resolve, of course. But you know that. This card is just incredibly powerful, once again, something that can be splashed into all decks. You don't run it for the chain ability, you run it just because it can kill everything, and when you're in a pinch, it helps. After that, we run one Morella. This card just helps with consistency a lot. It's a way to get Paleozoics in the graveyard on turn 1. You know, as soon as your opponent's first turn starts, you can have that little cushion of 2 Paleozoics to work with when you're chaining your traps and whatnot. It can help a lot, especially if you only have 1 or 2 other Paleozoics to work with. After that, we run Lost Wind. This is a fairly new card. Came out in, I don't know, Raging Tempest or Maximum Crisis, something like that. Basically, it negates the effects of a monster on the field and halves its attack permanently, which is just fantastic. And then, whenever your opponent summons anything from the extra deck, including pendulums, just anything, whatever, you can get this card back from your graveyard and do it again, and then it's banished. But every time you activate it, you get a Paleozoic. It works great in a lot of decks, but especially this one. There's just so much synergy. One card I would like to mention that is not on YGO Pro right now. If you guys know how I can update all this whatnot, please let me know. But I've been checking the forums, and I have not seen any updates for this. Anyway, I want to mention Unending Nightmare. This is a really good new card out of Maximum Crisis. It is a continuous, and you just pay 1,000 life points, and then you can destroy any face-up spell or trap on the field. It's really good against field spells. It's really good against pretty much everything. And being a continuous trap, you can summon Paleozoics off of it. In real life, I play Unending Nightmare at 3 in this deck. Anyway, moving on. I run 2-Dimensional Barrier. I think everyone knows how good this card is. Just stopping the extra deck for a turn can be really useful against a lot of decks, especially that Zodiac matchup. Then you get to, special summon that Paleozoic just like any other trap. Worst comes to worst, you can activate this on your turn. You still get the Paleozoic even if you're not actually using the effect of the card. So in addition to its normal effects, it also helps with the consistency of this deck in general. And then we've got Compulsory Evacuation Device. This is a fun card. It's a staple of older formats, but being a normal trap card, it works nicely with the Paleozoics. And every once in a while you might even want to possibly send your own Swap Frog or something back to your hand if you need more frogs in the graveyard. It can be versatile, and as always, you get that plus in this deck. And then the final Paleozoic card we got in this deck is Canadia. This is the Book of Moon of the deck. It's about as useful as Book of Moon. It's nice because you don't have to pay anything, like, what is it? Dynamascus, all these cards are freaking hard to pronounce, but that doesn't make the deck any worse. Anyway, this Book of Moons, it flips something face down, it can disrupt plays pretty easily, it's nice to have, and it can turn into a monster. And then to round out the main deck anyway, we've got the Solemn Brigade. 3 strikes and a warning. Yeah, they negate things. You can't chain Paleozoics to them, unfortunately, but they're still the Solemn Brigade, and you still want them in your deck. That takes care of the main deck, so now we will move on to the extra deck. First off, we've got 3 Paleozoic Amalukharis. Yeah, these names are hard to pronounce, but this guy is pretty crazy. He takes 3 Paleozoics, and you absolutely have to make sure that you have a trap attached to him as XYZ material. Make sure that's the last thing you take off, because his main effect only works when you have a trap as XYZ material. And his main effect is that he can destroy anything on the field, which is just crazy nice, Your opponent thinks they have you beat, you manage to get 3 cards out of the field, you pull this, and you pop their main combo piece, and they're just devastated. But in addition to that, also, whenever a trap is activated, your trap, your opponent's trap, any trap, and you get to look at the card on the top of your deck, and if it is a trap, you add it to your hand. And seeing as how this deck only runs, I don't know, maybe 10 cards, 11 cards that aren't traps, that is a pretty powerful amount of draw power. After that, we've got number 45, Crumble Logos, the Prophet of Demolition. He can be nice. Honestly, don't use him much. I run him at 1. But he can negate things, which is useful sometimes. He doesn't negate things like Totally Awesome does. He just negates a face-up monster as long as he's on the field, but sometimes that can be long enough. After that, we've got the star of the deck, Totally Awesome. This card is amazing. If you don't know what it does by now, then I don't know, you must have been living under a rock. But basically what it does is it negates any card effect by destroying any other aqua type monster from your hand or field, and it negates any card your opponent activates. And then, if you want to, you can set that card on your side. So say they play a Riot Jackie or Bottomless Trap Hole. You're just like, no, I negate that, and it's mine now. And if you don't have any other Aqua-type monsters, he can tribute himself. And when he does die, he can either send himself back to the extra deck, or he can send another one of your frogs from the graveyard back to your hand. Perhaps a Rototonin if you're out of stuff to banish to summon him. Anything you want. And in addition to that, his third effect, because this card is so balanced, is that during either player's standby phase, you can detach material from this card and special summon a frog from your deck. So say during your opponent's standby phase, you want to summon a dupe frog so that nothing can attack your Totally Awesome, and then during your standby phase, you summon Swap Frog, which sends a Rototonin into the deck. And bada bing, bada boom, you've got 3 or 4 new frogs on the field to make new Totally Awesomes or Paleozoic monsters or whatever your heart dreams. So you definitely run him at 3 in this deck. And then we've got a Shinki Centaura. Can't be destroyed by battle, which is cool. And he can return cards from the field to the hand. Don't really see a lot of people run this card, but it can really be useful if you have life points to spare and there's a big beater that you can't get over. You just let this guy not be destroyed by battle and then return that thing to the hand, and hopefully you can deal with it later. Then we've got Cat Shark, also can't be destroyed by battle, and he doubles the attack and defense of other XYZ monsters, which is cool. Don't really use him much, but he's fun, and I like cats and sharks. It's a cute card, so there you go. Then we got number 96, Dark Mist. I love this card. I've had it for a very long time. I've got the ultimate rare in real life, and he is great for taking down beaters because no one sees it coming. Nobody knows what this card is. It's not on the profile that I linked to and talked about at the beginning of this video. So basically what it does is once per battle during either player's turn, when an attack is declared involving this card and an opponent's monster, you can detach 1 XYZ material from this card, have the attack of your opponent's monster, and if you do, this card gains that same attack. The attack gain is permanent, and his base attack is 100. So basically what that means is he can beat anything's attack by 100. And then the next time he has to attack, he gets more and more powerful, and if for some reason your opponent lets this thing stay on the field, by the time it detaches its third material, nothing's going to get over it. And then finally, in the extra deck, we've got Paleozoic Openbenina. Anyway, I like this card, but I'd almost never find myself playing it, honestly. It makes it so you can activate Paleozoic cards from your hand, which sounds really nice, but, I mean, usually you don't have Paleozoics in your hand by the time you can get this on the field. It is nice, though, if you ever need, like, one specific card really badly, because you can add it from your deck to your hand, and then once you have it, you can just play it immediately. So if you have something you need to banish, you can play this card, get the banisher, discard something, and banish it, and that's really nice. But yeah, that is my Paleozoic deck profile. I'll leave the extra deck up to you. That's really personal choice, however you want to tech that. Probably add some spell trap destruction. Right now I just have it set up to add some more frogs, make it more of a froggy beatdown deck from back in the day, just to play casually with my friends. But if you're going to take this to a tournament, you obviously want to tech that out. Anyway, thanks for watching, and if you like that video, please like and subscribe for more. Thanks.